Today I just wanted to come on here and do a brief video about a spiritual practitioner versus a mental health therapist. How do you determine which one you need to seek, which one you need to speak with, talk with, work with? Or, do you need to do both? Because sometimes some of the work can actually overlap. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And this is a topic that is very near and dear to me, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. So I wanted to come on here and speak about it and talk about it, start a dialogue about it, get other people's thoughts and opinions and things like that. I think this topic is very important because sometimes you have a lot of people who do what determines spiritual bypassing, okay? So spiritual bypassing, what is that? Spiritual bypassing is when people tend to avoid their psychological needs, their unresolved traumas, their behaviors, their emotions, and they replace it with their spirituality, or they cover it up with spirituality. However, the issue with that is, from what I've seen and what I've witnessed, when that happens, ask yourself, where does that go? Where does all that trauma, grief, abuse, neglect, whatever it might be, difficult emotions to process, where does that go? It doesn't just disappear. It stays stored in our body. It manifests in different ways, sometimes through sickness. When you see spirituality, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it manifests in people's spiritual walk. You can see it, especially it can be very visible in spiritual leaders. For example, I'm just using this as an example, okay? So say you have a man who is in spiritual authority or who's a spiritual authority. And they were abandoned by their mother, or their mother severely abused them. Their mother sold them for sexual acts, just for example. And they get into a position of authority. Sometimes what you'll see happen, if that is not taken care of, processed through, you will see them demean women, treat women badly, have teachings that teach against women, or like they're not human or they're not to be respected, all because of their experience with women that they never dealt with. Or some people, even like with that's why you see different cults where people, they do perform different sexual acts, or they tell people, in order to, follow this way and be a disciple, or to be initiated, you have to perform this sexual act on the leader of this organization. These things come from unresolved issues that the person has not dealt with. Control. When someone wants to control a group of people and not allow them their own free will, that's someone who might be seeking control that they've never had in their life, for example. And sometimes it's not even that they're doing it on purpose or purposefully. It could be completely outside of their awareness and they don't know. But this is why it's important to bridge the gap, which is part of when I talk about African traditional religions, ATR-Informed Therapy is about, is bridging the gap between these spiritual systems and mental health therapy, and having them come together and work together as a unit. Having spiritual practitioners refer some of their clients. I've had that happen. Or having mental health therapists even refer to a spiritual practitioner if you know that a person practices a certain faith, for example, or a certain spiritual system. So being able to work together is in a holistic way for the healing of the person that we're serving and that we're working with. But again, it's very important because I've seen it a lot. Again, I see it more in with people in high spiritual positions that can do this if they have unresolved or they're avoiding certain issues in their life. Or, some people get into it, spirituality, join groups and things like that. Think about the people who actually join the group and allow the leader to do these things to them. It's because they have unresolved issues as well. They might not know who they are, what their purpose is. They just want to belong because they've been abandoned before. So they put up with any and everything in order to be in a group, and they just believe what the person says because, it usually starts off with, some type of love bombing. A person can be really good at reading other people and their vulnerabilities and using that to get them into their group. People know, just like sexual abuse perpetrators, they know the type of people to go after, whether conscious or unconscious, to go after in order to be able to victimize them. And then you have that victim who doesn't want to tell anyone, they feel it's their fault. They internalize it, right? So it's just this whole big glob of mess, basically. So that's why we're talking about what we're talking about today. So first I'm going to start off with, and let me point out too, that sometimes you'll have spiritual practitioners tell you, oh, you don't need therapy. Spirituality and what you believe in will do it all. That may work for some people, but that does not work for everyone. And there's nothing wrong with seeking out a mental health therapist or working with a therapist, okay? All right, so what is a spiritual practitioner? I'm going to start there. A spiritual practitioner is called different things in different ATR systems. So, for example, we have in Haitian voodoo, a male priest is called a Hugon. I could be pronouncing that wrong. A female priestess is called a Mambo. In Ipa, a female priestess is called an Ianifa. And a Babalao is the male priestess. Obea, I think, is like a Caribbean practitioner. We can even include like African American pastors, even though we're talking about African traditional religions. We can include pastors in this as well. Anyone who's a teacher, who has spiritual authority, those are considered spiritual practitioners. A lot of times a spiritual practitioner is trained either from a young age from another practitioner, or sometimes they might be called as they get older, whether it's from their ancestors or someone like that. But that is a spiritual practitioner. I'm looking to the side because I have some notes here, okay, that I'm looking at to keep me on track. So their focus is usually to support a person to navigate their relationship with the divine, the creator, God, the universe, ancestors, to help you be aligned with your spirit, to help you to fulfill your purpose. Okay, so that's a spiritual practitioner. That's usually their focus. And that doesn't encompass everything. This is just a general definition of some of the things they do. They teach spiritual principles, provide spiritual guidance as it relates to issues in your life. They deal with spirit, soul, cosmic order, ancestral connection. They may use tools such as divination, prayer. Some of them have like a sacred text that they go by. Offerings. Trying to think, is there anything else? Of course, there's other things that I can't think of right now. But those are some of the tools they might use to help you to become balanced, to correct any spiritual imbalances, to help you to become spiritually aligned, to remove energetic blocks. They might prescribe like different cleansing baths, certain herbs to help with your healing, things like that. Okay. And then we have a mental health therapist. And they usually have to go to school. You know, they can be a licensed clinical social worker. Some master's level social workers or master's level provide therapy under a licensed clinician. We have licensed professional counselors as well. And so these are people who focus on supporting a person, like navigating their psychological thoughts, so to speak. So like their inner human psychology, that can be their thoughts, emotions, nervous system, different traumas. So we are here to help heal the mind, okay, and to work through different thoughts, feelings, behaviors. What else? We might prescribe, you know, some mindfulness activities, journaling, cognitive behavioral therapy. We might do that in sessions with different clients as well. And so we work with them to establish goals to help with their mental health, whether they're suffering with depression, anxiety, what else? ADHD, different diagnoses. That's another thing we diagnose. As clinicians, we diagnose. We use a DSM-5 to diagnose clients. So practitioners, they do not diagnose, okay? So we're helping to, sorry, someone's trying to call me at the same time, and I'm trying to look at my notes, okay? Back to my notes, all right. So cognitive restructuring, helping you to see things in a different way. Changing your perspective, changing your mind, working on changing your behaviors, things like that, helping you process different traumas and your emotional health, okay? So those are kind of the different, but and as you can see, like, they do overlap. There is some sort of overlap with both of them. The goal for each system is to bring restoration of wholeness, healing, making connections. So for making connections in therapy, we might talk about, okay, who is your support group? Who do you rely on? How can we bring them in? What gives you a sense of belonging? And a spiritual practitioner might say something like, you know, what community do you belong to? You know, how does that spiritual community help you? And again, that's the same as a support system. And what else? They both, I believe, also help you to explore your purpose. I know when I do therapy, my goal, my ultimate goal, I kind of blend spirituality in my therapy as well. But my ultimate goal is to, if we can find out who you are, what you're here for, what your purpose is, then, you know, we can break a lot of these blockages once you get to know who you are. And I think that's a common goal that therapy has, for the most part, not all the time, and spiritual practitioners in the spiritual community. For example, I was working with a spiritual coach before, and something we worked on that was really therapeutic, really, but it really, like, she integrated it into our spiritual work. And that was, I did an inner child activity, and she had me go talk to my inner child. And, you know, this was years ago. And it was such a breakthrough for me. I was like, oh, I need to use this in therapy, because I had actually never used it in therapy. But at the same time, we were doing different rituals together, other different activities. She also had me like doing some journaling, but we did work with certain herbs and crystals and things like that. We did some Reiki to clear energetic blockages. So I'm using this as an example to show that it all can come together as well. But I do believe that when it comes to processing and really bringing up to get out of your body those traumas, those deep traumas that we have suppressed, repressed, avoided, whatever you might have done with it, in order to bring that up and get it out and process it, I do believe that that is the responsibility of a mental health clinician or a therapist to help with that, or that can support you in that. And it's not that some of these things, some people, you know, they do work on things and get through things on their own by reading self-help books and different things like that. So it's not to say the therapist is the only way, but they're there to support you so that you don't get hung up on, you know, using spirituality as a scapegoat and then it coming out in your spiritual life, because it doesn't allow you to have the fulfilling life that you are destined and meant to have. I see this a lot. I like to use the example of grief because I see grief spiritualized a lot. Where it's like, okay, someone dies and you totally ignore the human parts of it. It's just like, okay, they died, they transitioned, and, you just move on. Some people might say they went to heaven. Some people might say they transitioned to the ancestral realm, and, it's okay. But therapy will allow you to process the grief, understand the stages of grief, validate the feelings that come up. It's not wrong, because spirituality, in some, I'm not saying all, okay, will make you feel bad for wanting to grieve or feeling sad as if you shouldn't feel that way. And there's a level of them both working together, right? So the therapist processes the stages of grief, helps validate those feelings that come up for you, the anger, the depression, helping to lead you to some type of acceptance. And or a spiritual practitioner may help you understand their transition into the ancestral realm, learning to have a relationship with them in a different way. Both have the same goal, and that is to help you to manage the grief, to understand the grief in a different way, to be able to walk through life without that grief actually paralyzing you. And so, again, they're both trying to help you to integrate that loss, just in different ways. Okay. And so, yeah, that's just an example of one of them. And the goal here also is to, recognize that as a therapist, I can refer someone to a spiritual practitioner if it's outside of my scope. And as a spiritual practitioner, it's okay to refer someone, to a mental health therapist to get more help with their needs that are outside of your scope. There might be things as you're working with the person that comes up that needs to be addressed. And it's okay to say, go see a therapist, or to refer them. And as far as for African traditional religions or spirituality informed therapy, this particular type of therapy is where we make connections to therapists who are informed, clients who practice these systems, connecting them with therapists who are informed in these types of religions and spirituality, so that you have someone you can be open with. You can talk about what you're doing with your spiritual practitioner. You can talk about your belief system without feeling shame or guilt or, embarrassed about it, not having to hide it. And so, yeah, I really want everyone listening, if you haven't, take time to think about, when you come upon a situation or you notice certain patterns, do I see a spiritual practitioner for this, or do I need a little bit more? Do I need to go a little deeper, and I need to see a therapist to kind of move past some of these things, process some of these things? Do I need to work with both? And this is a topic that can be discussed at so many levels and so many depths. So it might not be the last time I speak about it. But even as a person, if you're in a group and you have certain, things that you haven't dealt with, really being mindful of the type of group you're in, the leadership, is there a level of control? Are they telling you things that don't make sense, but you kind of go along with it because you just want to belong somewhere? Really becoming aware. And the more, I want to stress, the more you become aware of who you are, your purpose here, you'll find that you will, I'll call it, vibrate at a new level, a different level, and all those things are going to fall off. Those type of people are going to fall off. And even if you have a goal, like, you feel called to become a spiritual practitioner and help other people, really taking time to examine yourself and where you are in life, Have you processed those emotions? Because it can spill off and bleed, as they say, onto other people that you're trying to help unintentionally. It might not even be intentional. You might have certain ways of thinking that trickle onto other people as you're doing work with them. So, and it's not that we're looking for perfection, because ultimately, how do I say this? Ultimately, we're all going to continue to work on ourselves, grow and learn, become more aware of things that we didn't know were there before. Okay. So it's not that you're looking for perfection, but the more you get to know yourself and the more you have an understanding of why you do certain things, and that's what therapy does, get underneath the behavior. Why am I doing this? You can start to pick up quickly. Like, oh, you might notice yourself doing something. Oh, I'm doing this again. Okay, sorry, the guy decided to start his truck while I'm doing this. But anyway, the neighbor. But yeah, so like really recognizing your own and being conscious would be the goal, so that you can make changes, and so you can really be the helping individual that you want to be, and that you desire to be, and that you might be called to be. So yeah, really taking time to think about that. And even if you're in spiritual leadership authority position, considering for yourself, do I need to seek help? Really being aware of yourself. Some people are completely unaware. Some people, they are aware and they're just doing it. And because it's a need that's being met inside of them. And if that need and the cost of other people's lives the need is more important to them for whatever reason. Okay. Whatever, it can be explained, you can help it make sense once you understand what's underneath the behavior, but it doesn't make it right. So, yeah, let's all just heal together, work together, and for our community, and so that we can make a change and a lasting impression in the lives of the people around us and in our own life. It's nothing like living, with complete self-love from a place of healing, continuous growth, and just really loving on yourself so that you can spread that to other people. So yeah, thinking about, do I need a spiritual practitioner? Do I need a mental health therapist? Do I need to work with both? Or do I want to, So yeah, something to think about. Just wanted to come on and say that today. I think it's a very important topic to begin to talk about more and more in our community. All right, see you on the next video. Thank you.